Welcome back to another episode of Over the Glass. I am your host, Ness.
And I am Jay.
I think I'm experiencing a little bit of a lag here, but we're gonna get through this. This is how we work. I think I want to ease into this conversation because it is going to be a little intense, probably. But yeah, how was your week?
Well, right before we hopped on, we were just talking about the buttons you should not press on my keyboard. And I mean that in terms of like my boundaries.
Mm.
And some of those boundaries were overstepped during the work week, and I really had to do some work to reel myself back and remember I am in a professional setting. And some things are going to have to be worded a little differently. So on top of that going on and the things that are happening across America and how it is finding its way into the sport that we love so much. I mean, it's always kind of been there, but we always get the keep politics out of sport. Well,
There was no way to keep it out of the sport this time around. It was crazy. I did it like I told you before we started recording. I wasn't able to catch the final for the Four Nations, but I was keeping track on I was popping into Twitter here and there just to see what the discussion looked like. And nobody's really surprised by this because of the political climate, but it was really interesting to see how intertwined it was with this tournament, specifically between the US and Canada, because of what stupid orange man has been saying in the news and things. Yeah. If you guys didn't know, we're not a fan. I'm sure you guys aren't either if you're following this podcast. Just to get this conversation going, PK Subban decided to post a little. Such a strange thing to tweet for a Canadian, but he screenshotted a response by. I don't want to name him by name. He doesn't deserve to be named by
he who
name.
shall not be named.
For real.
That guy.
And honestly, this doesn't even look like Twitter. This might be from that other platform that he uses.
That
But
thing that shall not be named.
the post reads by this orange man guy. I'll be calling on our great American hockey team this morning to spur them on towards victory tonight against Canada, which with far lower taxes and much stronger security will someday, maybe soon, become our cherished and very important 51st state. I will be speaking before the governors tonight in DC and will sadly therefore be unable to attend, but we will all be watching. And if Governor Trudeau, that's crazy, would like to join us, he would be most welcome. Good luck to everybody and have a great game tonight. So exciting. And then he signed it. First of all, I want to point out that he did not write this message himself because he is not this coherent. He does not speak in this way. He does not type this way either because we have seen his messages in the past. Secondly, this is the message that PK Subban posted, and his caption reads, "The Trizzy train with the little train emoji with the little smokes behind it could be coming through soon with the little side eye emoji as well. Stay tuned." And I don't understand why he would be excited about that. I have no comments on that. But I don't know. That was weird. What really captured my attention, the only reason I even saw this was because Akeem Aliu quote tweeted it with a very long response about PK Subban, which was very interesting. And let me read this one out to y'all if you didn't catch it. So he says, "I've watched you from afar and never said anything for two main reasons. One being the respect I have for your brothers and parents, not for him, for his brothers and parents. And two, I've always wanted to keep the infighting between folks of color to a minimum. This was something I couldn't let go. I've known you since I was 10 years old and played with you, so I'd say I know you better than most at a deeper level. You were a hell of a player, and instead of using your platform, you did everything in your power to gain acceptance and popularity. Nothing with you has ever been genuine, but transactional and usually for publicity reasons. Even during the most sensitive time, both politically and socially, you take the side of the oppressor because that's who you make your money from. I would have thought the quote unquote love you have always claimed for your country, a country you represented at the highest level, would shine through to push back on rhetoric of annexation and humiliation of the very land you were born and raised in. But even that doesn't get you to do the right morally. This is the reason why every place you have played, no one liked you, and players on the inside have always known who you really are, a sellout of the highest proportions. You are the perfect example of why people of color haven't progressed at the highest level of society. From one man to another, you're a disgrace and history will judge you accordingly. I was like, damn, he didn't come to play today. That was crazy. First, okay, so I want to touch on the very first one where he says, I've always wanted to keep the infighting between folks of color to a minimum, and I completely understand this perspective. I feel like, people of color are always pinned up against each other. It doesn't matter their backgrounds, it doesn't matter if they come like same culture, whatever it is. What it like the stupid things that we hear between, if excuse me if this sounds offensive, but I'm just quoting what people are saying. When two people who are black, right, get into a fight, and we have seen this when it comes to hockey fights within the game, people will make comments and quote unquote jokes that, oh, it's black on black violence, right? And this all ties into the political climate of what's been going on. People will bring up gun violence and all this, whatever. So I understand why he says like he wouldn't want to bring this publicly, but he also touches on he couldn't keep his mouth shut for this particular reason because of how heightened the political division and everything is right now. So that was interesting, and I understand it. I don't know. Do you have thoughts before I move on to?
Yeah, so that part, like, I mean, there's a lot of I'm glad that we're taking the time to kind of go through each, like, each portion of this, because that in itself, I mean, we're not of black descent, but obviously is stories of minority immigrant family. There's intersections as we continue to talk about, with really just any sort of conversations that come down the line. Like, I can definitely resonate with that. And if we tie it back to the political climate that's going on right now, like, you saw a lot of folks, especially from like Hispanic background, who, while they may have come through the system that I know that, like, my mom went through, they kind of get into this mindset where they're like, oh, I did it legally. And even though he's saying that they're going to deport people who didn't do it properly, that doesn't include me. And, I can get behind, well, yes, you should do it properly, and everyone will respect that I did it properly. But we is like, the thing that comes to mind is, what's his name, Adam Ellis, that meme that he has, where it's like people like the part of the queer community that doesn't
Mhm.
that excludes the T, and then they side with people who are trying to eradicate trans people, and they feel like, oh, we can be buddies. But we always but the hidden, well, not so hidden, the actual message behind those types of things is that once they're done getting rid of the trans folks, they're coming for you next, because you don't align with what they're talking about. And so,
Right.
tie it back to the whole, not having infighting, with folks of color. It's that while we are part of a community, we don't want it to necessarily get too extreme and being like, oh, you're not, like, oh, you're not really Asian, or you're not really black if you think a certain way. But the type of responses where you're excluding yourself from like I'm the good version of
Yeah.
my ethnicity. I did it legally. I pulled myself up through my bootstraps and I did it every way that is like doesn't lean on all this other stuff. Like they're not seeing me as an enemy. It's going to be you, and I don't want to be associated with you. Like with the last episode we talked about the Kendrick Lamar thing and the contrast with like Uncle Sam and Kendrick Lamar, and that conversation of how he's like, you're not doing it the way that society is telling you to play this game. And that's kind of like a similar thing where it's like these folks who are like, and I get it, it's like it's also, I feel like it comes out of like fear and feeling vulnerable, and you're just trying to make sure that you're safe, your family's safe. But at the end of the day, it's like we need our community to be strong together. And so I can understand where Akeem is saying, he wanted to keep away from doing all that because he wanted to support Subhan's family, and he doesn't want to get into a situation where they are fighting at like in community fighting, because that
Hmm.
doesn't help anyone out when the real threat is people who don't like the community as a whole.
Right.
And yeah, so
Yeah, because if to that point, it's like if they did, fight in public, as he's calling him out right now, then it kind of gives the people in power, aka white folks, an excuse to continue attacking the community as a whole. So we understand it. The next bit where he says, um, instead of using your platform, you did everything in your power to gain acceptance and popularity. Nothing with you has ever been genuine, but transactional and usually for publicity reasons. I could see that. Um, while I didn't follow PK very closely or anything, I could see that he was always doing a lot to gain acceptance socially, whether it was him being goofy in some shows or on the round table, he's saying some ridiculous stuff. It never seemed like you never did see him talking out about, the struggles of people of color within the sport. When the Hockey Diversity Alliance was formed, they didn't ask him to join, and I thought that was interesting. Um,
I did
yeah.
see, I don't know if it's in this article that we're also going to touch upon briefly, but I do recall that he had designed at one point when he was on the New Jersey Devils. He designed their Black History
Mm,
Month jersey. He has so this article that we'll touch on more a little bit later. The one excerpt from there is like it says one of the NHL's few black players at the time, the 33-year-old Subban was an activist and philanthropist who donated millions of charitable efforts through his 13-year career with the various clubs that he was in. So it's like so there were reasons outside of, we talked about how we enjoy the players in particular who have, they show their personality. You feel like they kind of break the mold of this like narrow like
mhm.
hockey like standard hockey player, and so he really stood out. And then you also feel like um, you want to support him because he's one of the few at the time black players at the highest level of this game. And then while I also was not following him terribly closely, you did see him a lot, just kind of just by the reality of we're following this sport. And he did do some things related to charity and things like that. So it's very upsetting to see that, like, even after he has retired from the game, he's still, of course, he's on the shoot
TNT or
what
something.
yeah, I want to say TNT. um Especially during well, he was on the panel for the Four Nations, so
Mm,
whichever it was, like ESPN, TNT, whatever. he was one of the guys on their panel, and he's been doing that ever since he retired from the sport. Um, and yeah, so I don't want to jump ahead to the thing that I'm leaning towards referencing. I do want to finish Akeem's thoughts on the situation first.
Right. We do have more to say on that, but let me see. What else did I want to touch on? The next little paragraph where he mentions his love for his country, because, as you know, a lot of these guys are very prideful. They do like to represent their countries. The fact that he puts it in quotes and then, says, through the, yeah, wait, hold on. A country you represented at the highest levels would shine through to push back on rhetoric of annexation and humiliation of the very land you were born and raised in, but even that doesn't get you to do the right morally. So, in this instance where he is shining, or where he's shining a light on this orange man, instead of calling him out for the things that he's saying in public, where he's trying to get Canada to be the 51st state and like really just like breaking trust and the like, what do you call it, the basically the peace that we have with Canada as our neighbors. Like, we share a border. He is creating tension for no reason. Instead of Subban calling him out on it, like, what are you doing? You obviously you have this guy's attention being a part of this sport. Instead of calling him out and being like, this isn't cool, like, stop, he's going ahead and he's adding fuel to that fire. And it's like, obviously not the right thing to do, which is why he's calling him out. You can't even do the morally right thing in this situation. You can't even speak words to back up your own country that you're so proud to be from. Is insane.
Yeah, and I did see the reaction that he had when Canada did win the Four Nations on the stick of Connor McDavid, and he was like super excited and whatever. And it's like it goes right back to what we had touched on earlier in Akeem's response, is that he's just doing whatever he needs to do to make the bucks. He's being this he's being essentially a puppet is what it feels like. Like whatever is going to cater to the folks that are going to give me the most money, the most praise, who are going to continue to allow me to have the success on a platform. Like he's basically like thinking of himself.
Mm-hmm. That's why he calls him a
And
sellout.
yeah, I mean he's a, you know, we talked about how the time that he spent in the NHL, he was being an activist, he was being, you know, he was giving back for like charities and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know if he's still doing that sort of stuff, but it's very apparent that he is quite comfortable with instead of using his platform to call out stuff like this, and how like Canada's been booing the US anthem, and people just think that's like a U like the like not like ignorant people are just thinking that it's like, oh, it's because we have this rivalry in sports. And it's like, no, no, like Canada specifically booing when the U.S. anthem is being sung because of what's going on right now. And I
Mm-hmm.
wish it wasn't that. I wish we could just be like, yeah, we're just rivals and everything's fun. Sadly, that's not the case here because we love a good rivalry. That was, I really, really feel like that was majority of the situation is the current political climate right now. And so instead of reading the room, PK, or he read it and decided he was going to kick everyone off the cliff anyway, he's over here getting like super excited that he who should not be named is going to be like watching. And there were people who were talking about like he might even show up to the game, where I'm like, he shows up to this game, I'm not watching any of it.
No, for real. No, I think what aggravates me more is the fact that he gave him this silly little nickname, the Trizzy Train, like to kind of connect back to his black culture. It's like, what are you doing? That's embarrassing. Anyways, the last paragraph that really that really hit like that was a mic drop, man. Where
Mm-hmm.
he goes, "You are the perfect example of why people of color haven't progressed at the highest levels of society. From one man to another, you're a disgrace, and history will judge you accordingly." He was not holding back. He called him out for exactly what he is. He is, aside from like a sellout, he just has no backbone. Like you can't stand there, stand your ground and be like call out the wrongs and what's happening. You have to like go ahead and I don't know, like we keep saying, he's just taking the side of whoever gives him the most money, wherever he gets the most positive attention or where he feels accepted, I guess. If he doesn't feel accepted by one side, then he's just going to like duck away from that or whatever it is. But the fact that he doesn't hold back, calls him a disgrace, is really telling on how this quote unquote relationship between them has, it has really played out. No thoughts.
Like I mean, I can continue to talk about this for a while, but it just I feel like in a nutshell, I the best way to describe it is just he's being a puppet, and he's the one that is controlling himself. He's
Right.
moving himself along wherever I want to go. I will assimilate into that role. I will put on whatever costumes that will get me the most attention. And I just find it really sad, and I'm sure he's not gonna care. He's not gonna feel it because the dude's wealthy, will continue to be wealthy. He's already done whatever, he's whatever stepping stones that he needed to use to get where he needs to be. He's essentially kicked them over
Hmm.
after he's ascended to a comfortable
Right.
place, and
Like the
and
saying
we
where you pull the ladder up from behind you or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
And
I
we
got
know, if you're not familiar with like Akeem's story in this sport, it's a contrast. Like, and it's sad to see that, like he talked like, in his response to him, as we mentioned, he talked about how he's known him since they were 10 years old. They were essentially, it was like a fork in the road. One
you.
went one direction for things that occurred in the locker room, and another managed to, from what we know, avoid that. And if he didn't, maybe he got help along the way. Maybe he decided to buckle down and take it. Whatever the case may be, PK found his way to still be able to continue do the sport, and Akeem unfortunately had to go in a different direction. And but it's just upsetting to see that not to say that if you like, oh, if PK didn't, this is what, this is how he would have been. Like, you still have the power to do it, and PK is in a situation where, while if he did decide to use his platform in the way that Akeem has used it, there's possibility that they take him off the broadcast. But that's such a, from my perspective, that would be such a minor thing, because you have the capacity, you have the wealth to open other doors and be that leader for others who were trying to follow in your footsteps, and had the ladder taken away from them. But instead, he decided, I don't care about all that, even though I showed that I do during my time as a player. I have decided that no, this is what I care about now. I care about me. Don't care about you guys anymore. I care about me.
Yeah. And then I guess this is kind of a good segue to get into the article you were touching on, where we talked about this when it happened. When was it? In 2023?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, when everything with the Pride jerseys was going on, and there was a lot of pushback. And Subban decided to come out with a statement about how he just, again, it's so wish-washy. Like, I'm not taking sides here, but really you are. Let's see. His quote says, "We cannot push everyone to be an activist. We need to be careful. I feel people pick and choose what they want to talk about, and I don't like it when we put the onus on athletes to be activists. They don't need to be activists. I'm not saying it is right or wrong to wear the Pride jersey. We just got to be very careful how we push players to do things. You can support the LGBTQ community without having to wear a hat, t-shirt, or a jersey." And at the time, this was everyone was very angry with the decisions being made about the jerseys being taken away and stuff. And for him to come out and say, him as a black player, knowing that we all know that he did not escape racism in this sport. He is dark skinned, and this is a very white sport, and people are mean. He did not escape racism. And for him to come out and say, I don't think it's on the players to be able to like make these decisions. They don't have to be activists. Let's just let them do whatever they want. It's like, dude, yes, be an activist. This is your sport. This is happening in your sport. Stand up for what's right and defend others. Just because you are not part of that community doesn't mean that you can't stand with them. Like, they're still facing discrimination the same way that you did sometime in your life. Do something about it.
Yeah, it's interesting that because quote unquote the action that was taken of like no jerseys, no specialty jerseys now to be worn during warm-ups, supposedly because of the whole backlash with the Pride jersey and players deciding to forego wearing them. We've already mentioned opinions. Like, I know a couple of episodes back, you talked about how you, in relation to the warm up jerseys, you were never quite sure. Like, I mean, it's mandatory, so you don't actually know if certain players are actually doing it because they want to, or if they're just being like, this is part of your job to wear it. So just go and do it. At least with the Pride tape, that's voluntary. That kind of gives players an outlet to show that they're a friend of the community. That's one way to show it. But all that to say, one, I mean, Subhan's talking on behalf of the queer community, and unless you want to tell us something, I don't think you're part of that community. And so for him to be speaking on behalf of the community already doesn't sit right with me. And then on top of him saying, like, relating this to activism with the jerseys, we've already talked about how, like, that's 20 minutes out on the ice and then you take it off for the rest of the game. Like, that's like the bar is below the ground. You're not, to be as blunt as possible, you're actually not doing anything. Like,
Right.
I mean, that's kind of like my feeling of it. I'm not trying to just to take away from how other folks within our community feel about it. I certainly loved it, seeing more about the design
Mhm.
and getting to see it out on the ice than the players wearing it. Going back to what you're saying, it's like mandatory anyway at the time. Um, but that's in itself, as a whole, you're trying to say that the NHL is like inclusive, and we're nowhere near that. Um, but that's not like if you're not saying anything, And we're not saying that players need to do that. We would love it if they would, but we're not holding them hostage, which is, I think, where this conversation to the people who decided to make this decision to no longer have the special teachers being worn during warm-ups, they saw it as like, no, this is like because fans were getting upset, because they were being asked by the media about these questions, it started to look like, oh, we're forcing this on the players, and we should, and essentially kind of like what PK is sort of saying, like, we need, like, let's not do that. And it's like, no one's, generally speaking, no one is doing that. That's not what I'm saying you need to be doing it, because at the end of the day, like I said, the bar is below the ground. If you're not saying anything, and going back to, oh my God, we've talked about this so much, but I know I've said at some point that when they were wearing them and you did ask them about it, and instead of them, if it's a pride night and they get asked about what it means to them, or anything related to it, they start naming off all of the different Black History Month, Hispanic heritage, blah, blah. And it's like, not that those are not important, but tonight is this thing. Just like when there's a Hispanic heritage, specialty night, I'm not hoping, well, you better say something about the queer community. That's
Right.
not the conversation right now. And I hated when it's like someone gave them the script and then it doesn't feel genuine, because then they don't really feel like they're speaking from the heart when they're like, well, because, we do this because we love our, fans from, the Black community and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you don't actually know what you're saying. And so, again, not to take away from what that means for other folks who are within those communities and stuff, but for me, ever since we started having these specialty nights, it's like, if you set the bar at this point one year, you can't be there next year. You have to be here. You have to continue to improve and to continue to find ways to raise awareness. And tying back to what PK is essentially saying is like, oh, we're already doing way too much. And
Right.
to ask them to whatever the heck, oh, that's way too much. They need to not do that.
Right. Okay. I think this is a good time to take a breather. I'm going to go ahead and talk about our sponsor for a couple of minutes. Just let me get this set up for y'all. As you know, we're being sponsored by DraftKings. So it might not feel like it, but spring's right around the corner. Know how you can tell? Golfers are hitting the links and we have some tournaments to talk about. And if you want to do more than just talk, put your money where your mouth is. Get in on the tee to green action with DraftKings Sportsbook. From Thursday's opening round through the closing round Sunday, DraftKings Sportsbooks has you covered with tournament props, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. If you've never bet on golf before, it's easier than you think. Just pick something simple like a golfer to win the tourney and make your pick. It's just that easy. Here's something special for the first timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. I don't have the money line open right now, but you guys can check that out if you have the app. And yeah, I guess people are about to start betting on golf this like coming season. So you do you, y'all. Hockey is still an option. Football's done. Basketball's still an option. Do your thing. Okay. We can get into like the little somewhat funner parts about this conversation. Apparently Paul Bizinet has said something about the tourney. I didn't see this, so you're gonna have to explain what's happening here.
So I didn't click anywhere close to what this Fox News tweet was about. It was more of the community notes that was attached to it.
It's
Because
so funny.
so the tweet that went out on Fox News's Twitter said ex Team Canada star says country will have quote national emergency end quote if team loses to US in Four Nations finals. And the community notes says essentially Biz may have played for Team Canada as a teenager in under 18 world championships. He was far from a star then and could be considered the pinnacle of his career. Paul Biznasty never played for Canada again. His fame has come post-career as a media personality. And that is the stuff I live for. Because I don't have access to TNT, which is more or less fine because the NHL decided this season that they don't want to play Sharks games on there, so that's fine. Save me money. But he's on their panel, and up until they included, he's not. I don't think he's part of the main one, but when Henrik Lundqvist is on the panel is really the only times where I will suffer through listening to anything related to what that panel is talking about, because he is essentially the jester of that panel. And he just says the dumbest shit. And we're not fans of the podcast that he's a part of, and if you are, you know what I'm talking about, because that's essentially what they write on. And I can't but that like this community note says, yeah, his fame came post career and in his media personality. He is a personality. People find him funny. I find it funny when other people make jokes about him. So but it's really so that in itself was amusing to see on this tweet that found its way into my feed relating to Fox News calling him a Canada star. It's like, hold up.
Star where?
You basically told us that you don't know anything about hockey in that sentence alone.
That's why they are called faux news. They don't, and also they live in their own alternate universe. Like, in what universe is Paul Bizinet a Canadian hockey star? That's so silly. I wanted to keep the silliness going. So as we all know, Canada ended up winning the Four Nations tourney, and they're like, Americans online were not happy. Americans who are watching hockey for the very first time were not very happy, just because I think of the negative attention it was getting, whatever. But I did see that Trudeau tweeted out after Canada's win, "You can't take our country and you can't take our game," which is, yes, I understand. Canadian hockey players, blah blah blah. I did see a response, or I guess a comment under that tweet that said from someone at This Is Moyo, said, "Frame this and send it through at SpaceX to the at White House as a tariff-free gift for at real Donald Trump." And that made me laugh so hard because it was like, yes, absolutely. for everything going on with politics and everything, this is such a good like little comeback. The whole tariffs thing, the whole Elon being involved with Bull, the White House tweeting some interesting things lately, which have been pissing me off. But we won't get into that. I don't know. This is fun. People were having fun with this, and as negative as a lot of this attention was, I feel like this was a way to shine some light on the sport. Like this tournament actually, like we kind of touched on, we talked about it last week about the views that the games are getting and stuff, but there were a lot of eyes on this tournament, specifically the final with Canada and the US. One of them being some 49ers players. McCaffrey tweeted best of 3 with the US versus Canada flags. George Kittle retweeted it with "Need more hockey, please," and the gif of this little kid holding a bowl saying, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" Um, and people commenting under that like the series is tied 1-1. People want more hockey. They want rematch. They're hoping that they play in the Olympics. It was a great game. Like this tournament really did bring a lot of attention to the sport, which is what the sport has been missing. What they've been wanting. I think they could have done a better job of, I don't know, better circumstances other than having the politics blend so much into it. But like seeing Sam, I forget her last name, but I follow her on Twitter. Also, she was responding to a lot of Americans like talking so much shit to her because she's Canadian, and she was calling them out because they were saying some shit after the first game between the US and Canada, and like who gets the last laugh, and then she came back and retweeted, "We do," because they ended up winning the final, and it was stuff like that. It was just crazy. It was too much like negative political stuff around this tournament instead of it being as fun as it could have been. It was weird because yay, like the sport is growing, but also like ew, I don't want it to grow with those people. Like we have enough of that problem. We don't need more of it.
Don't grow that way.
No, for real. Oh yeah. And then
I did see some. It's not anybody that I'm familiar with, but I think it was in in relation to basically U.S. fans being upset, and then Canadian fans, and the whole uh, interaction with that. I think this was a product of that, because somebody was pulling the numbers of how many people live in Canada versus how many people live in the US, and like comparing this thing about trying to use that as to, with Canada having less people and then still being really great at the sport and winning. It's supposed to be some kind of like gotcha type of thing, to because there are like millions more people living in the US. And I was like, I see where you're getting at, but like that in itself has so many cracks in it,
right.
because that's the sport that's your national. I'm not saying that like I like at the end of the day, yeah, Canada won. Like I'm not coming at anybody, but that is your national sport.
Mm.
Hockey is not a national sport in the US, even though we have majority of the teams here. It's not like our big sports are football, baseball, and
Basketball.
yes, basketball. Like, and also there's the whole costs related to it. Like you need ice usually to play this ice hockey sport versus even something like soccer that's more accessible. It
Mm.
may get, obviously with when you're trying to go professional, there's costs involved in that, but the ability to, like, I remember being able to go to parks when I was growing up, and there's a basketball court at every park. How much does
Mhm.
it cost to get a simple basketball? You don't need like a super expensive basketball to be able to shoot hoops. That's
No,
the
for real.
easy way for
Take
like
out a loan.
yeah, well, it's like with hockey, how are you supposed to the most basic thing that you need is a hockey stick. That in itself is going to cost you like maybe 50 to like $100 unless you get gifted it by somebody or get some plastic thing at like some random multi-purpose store. You know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, getting completely like away from the point that like some of these like responses in this like US Canada like rivalry like back talking. I'm like it's like you're comparing populations and saying that that's the reason why like you like that's like a big oh despite all the people that you have you still can't be better at us at this sport. It's like no
No, because
no
then you can make the argument that it's more competitive to play for this country because there are more people, and so more people are trying to get into the national team and blah blah blah. This is it's flawed.
and I also think it's silly when people were being like oh Canada had it's been forever since Canada's like won the Stanley Cup and like I think that in itself is also really weird because
Right.
there's a huge percentage of Canadians that play in the American market. So for you to say that like Canada hasn't won, like
Right.
sure.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then I saw someone making the argument like so similar argument and pulled up a list of how many or when was the last time a Canadian captain won the Stanley Cup, or it was like how many US or Americans have won or something, and they listed they showed the list that they had, and it was like, where the hell did you get this list from? What the last time Sidney Crosby won a cup was in 2016, and it was like, oh, he won in 2022, and then like I think it mentioned like Nick Foligno at one point, and it was like he's never won. Like, what are you talking about? And then this was still under like Sam's tweets, and then she was like, "Where did you get this list?" And she did a little digging, and it was Chat GPT.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking like this is why we don't rely on AI for this stuff, people.
You trying to sound smart and make these arguments, and you just come out looking even dumber, you know? Like, and it like it tracks because these are the people that are lazy and don't want to fact check, and also the ones that are like worshiping Elon and like where technology is going with AI and all of this blah bullshit. So, you know, it's just all very frustrating to see.
Silly,
Anyways,
silly.
some more fun. Lexi LaFleur Brown, our fave, tweeted Team Canada this, Team USA that. Well, I've got an even bigger crisis on my hands. My husband just got a tattoo of Jar Jar Binks playing hockey with the little skull emoji. Um, I wasn't sure how to feel about this. She posted a photo of it, and it's literally like Jar Jar in his attire, like from Naboo, as a I don't know, like when he's working at the Senate with. I'm sorry, I am a Star Wars fan, as like with
That's
Padme or
more than I
whatever.
would have known. I just figured they just wanted a green outfit, but okay, continue.
He's holding a hockey stick in his right hand. I can't tell if there's a puck in front of it or not because of the angle. His left hand, he has it up with a thumbs up, and he is on hockey skates. He's literally just standing there. It's not like a playing pose or nothing. He's just standing there with a thumbs up, holding a hockey stick, wearing hockey gloves. Jar Jar Binks. This was a little controversial. Jar Jar Binks is really hated within the Star Wars community for whatever reason. He is kind of annoying character, but he's just a character. Um, some people really like him because he's kind of endearing. He's a great friend in the series or whatever, but he is kind of annoying. He talks funny, blah blah blah. I can see why Lexi was like, "Why would you get this? This is so dumb." And I could also see why JT would get it because he's just like, "Why not?" But yeah, it kind of takes some attention away from the tension between the game. People are like, again, this is incredible. I'm obsessed. It's not truly best on best unless the Gungan nation is represented. which is, supposedly the species that Jar Jar Binks is from. This is so funny. I love it. Jar Jar on skates at a Star Wars hockey night when. So people were loving it. This was a cute little silly thing to pop up.
I think it's important to also note that JT Brown quote tweeted this with Misa like Jar Jar Rinks.
Not Riggs. I can't with this guy. Okay. Wanted to switch over to our Sharks for a quick second because while, as we know, we didn't have any of the players representing during the Four Nations tournament since Granlund was traded. But oh my God, some chisme, Jay. Did you see what happened?
I've just seen this headline. I have not consumed really any outside of are we talking about this later? Yes, the thing we're going to talk about after this. I've just been consuming the little bits of like the
Oh,
Sharks and what they've been doing non-Four Nations. I haven't really dove into what we're about to talk about, so I know nothing outside of this title.
right. So I saw Shang wrote a quick little article about something. Kovalenko had an interview or he was on a podcast or something. Headline says Kovalenko diffuses potential controversy. In quotes, I do not have any issue with our coach. Oh, excuse me, our coach. And I quickly skimmed this earlier, and apparently, yeah. So he appeared on a Russian podcast, and I said at some point, in quote, the coach doesn't like Russians, the GM likes Russians, the head coach doesn't, unquote. So I thought that was interesting. That's talking about Warsofsky, say supposedly he's not fond of Russian players, which is a very interesting allegation to make. I'm not saying I believe him or I disagree with him. I don't know the man. I don't know this guy, but these are his words. And I think Shang asked him about it, like, what's up with that? Oh no, okay, so let's see. Kovalenko via Sharks PR explained on Thursday, quote, the comments that were translated were taken out of context. I do not have any issue with our coach and everyone has treated me fairly in San Jose. I love playing here, unquote. So that was him kind of trying to to not have this blow out of proportion. And at some point, I think he said that he was joking around. It was taken out of context, something. Now, someone in the comments, I don't know if I believe them, in Shang's tweets, because it is name and a bunch of numbers, says, I am fluent Russian speaker, and there is nothing in that clip that suggests he was joking around. Shang did respond, said, that is fair. I've heard this from other Russian speakers. It's something to watch, I think, over time. Which is interesting because, like, this could be big, this is a big accusation. As much as we like Warsaw, this is not something to play around with. But I feel like he likes Askarov, like the way he's been talking about him in the media. Like he's for the kid. He's rooting for him. He's going to be the number one goalie for the team eventually. Who else is Russian on the team? Oh, Mokamadulin.
Shakir, yeah.
I don't think I've caught any of his quotes talking about him, but I haven't seen anything too crazy. Kovalenko, I could see him saying like if he needs to improve in some areas because he was traded here from the Avalanche. He probably was struggling over there, which is why he came over here. And if he has some things to work on, I could see if he's frustrated with the way his career has been going or not going. But to say like your coach is racist is crazy.
I would also say, just based on what you've summarized there, when it comes to players whose native tongue isn't English, and when we see them on a Russian podcast, and that has to get translated over, and then they are answering questions with our media and they're doing it in English. I kind of try to step back a bit and not use my perception of, if I'm speaking with another English speaking person who's, whether it's their native tongue or not, if they were born and raised in an English speaking country, I just try to give grace to that. The way that they are expressing themselves may not translate over the way that they would otherwise be understood in their native tongue. So yeah, so when I hear that like this was said on a Russian podcast and then he was asked by an English speaking person here and he has to respond in his second or third language, I'm like, that is a lot of translation of both words and the way that you express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen like even like when Mika was talking, Mika Zibanejad was talking about his feelings about Capo Kako and how he had issues within the Rangers organization and how people felt like, oh, he has no personality, or he like doesn't care when he's out on the ice. And Mika was kind of trying to explain the fact that, culturally it's different, and it just seemed like some of that stuff maybe was difficult for him to really show his personality and things like that. So yeah, it really, it's hard for me to take anything definitive from what Kovalenko is saying here. And you've already kind of said the other players that are in a similar situation as him, Russian player, doesn't look like Warsawski has said many nice things about them and whatever. And I mean, yeah, it's really hard to kind of, I don't want to really feel in one direction or another. I just don't feel like there's anything at this time to really be concerned about because we don't really know.
Yeah, I just thought it was really wild that this came up. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But go ahead and share with us the little silly tidbits that you've been keeping up with.
Look, we've been starved for some Sharks content. As you mentioned, we had no one in the Four Nations to be really rooting for outside of just enjoying hockey for what it is. But with the Sharks, we already know that Will Smith and Macklin were hanging out with each other in this clip that the Sharks put out, where they were asking questions to the guys at practice. They were asking what they did for the break and what was the highlight. When Smith came along, it was just like, Mac this, Mac that, like, yeah, we know you were with him the whole time, blah, 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 whatever. But it's cute, though. It's nice that they're so close with each other and they're spending all this time off and on the ice. And we like to see that. Another pair that we know are glued at the hip are William Eklund and Fabian Zetterlund. I think it was Eklund who pretty much was saying, this is what I did, and of course I did it with Zetterlund because duh, of course I'm hanging out with him. A lot of guys went to Hawaii, which I'm like, okay. There were a lot of guys who mentioned that they played golf, which I guess I don't. Like, I get that that's like a common thing that hockey players, as a secondary sport, they enjoy golf. But I mean, I like mini golf. If I were to go to an actual like golf course, I could get into it just because it's a sport, but I guess a part of me sort of feels like, don't you spend your summer doing that though? Like, is it that much of a need for you that you're like, oh, good, I have a break in this professional sport that I play of hockey, I'm gonna go find a range and I'm gonna go do golf. I must do golf. There were a lot of guys who were like, I played golf. And I'm like, I was hoping you'd say something else. I think it was Vanacek whose wife gave birth recently. So he was pretty much like, well, I was here because I've got a baby. I'm spending time with the baby. I'm like, oh, cute. But and then we do know that Ferraro got married this during this break, somewhere up near in the Sonoma area and whatever, from what me and my friends have deduced from the picture. We're like, where is that? Super cute. Love that for him.
Didn't realize I was in the present of Sherlock Holmes.
I was way off. I thought that was Monterey. So I went in the opposite direction. I was like, where is that? But that's great for him and his wife. But you know, we're excited. We court on Sunday, so later today the Sharks will have their first game back. I'm excited to watch because we love our boys.
I'm ready and excited to watch them keep losing. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're hoping for a win.
Did you see one other thing that comes to mind? Did you see that clip where they were doing the smelling salts?
Yeah.
And I thought it was so funny that I mean, it's no surprise that Mac was like, even though he messed up the first time and reacted, he's like, no, I'm gonna do it again. I'm like, this guy is competitive.
Too competitive.
No, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna and the prize was, you know, like some Halloween candy. And I'm like, bro, you could go down the street and buy a whole bag for yourself, but instead you're like, no, I'm gonna win this.
For real. This is for fun. Calm down a little bit.
And then Zetterlin, like staring into the camera like a madman, being like,
no reaction whatsoever. he was shoved it up his nose and was enjoying it. Crazy. And then some guys couldn't tolerate it at all, which was interesting.
I think one of them was Thrun. I think Thrun was one of the guys. Was like, haha, no. He's so sweet. He's such a sweet Harvard boy. No.
Couldn't do it. Sorry.
I've got the brains.
Okay, so outside of the Sharks, I did want to highlight this as well because we are still in Black History Month and we are still a fan of Miss Jordan Dabney, Jovechkin on Twitters. Well, not a fan, _ Joe. She did another design for another team. We did talk about her doing the design for the Sharks a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know how long it's been. My days are blurring. But she did one for the Oshawa Generals. Oshawa or Oshawa?
I think it's the second one.
Oshawa?
I think. I have never actually heard it said, so we're just going on vibes.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to say Oshawa Generals. I absolutely love this design. Wait. Before I get into it, which one is the main one? Okay, so the main one is, I actually don't know how to present. Should I try this? Before share screen. Before I... That's funny. I'm not prepared for this. Can we see? All right. So this bear paw with claws and all. I absolutely love this design. It has a graphic of the actual logo that she designed, as well as what each element represents. So if you're listening and can't see, I will read these off for you. So the 5 toes for the print, the paw print, represents the 5 General Memorial Cup trophies. There is 38 total pieces representing the 1937 to 38 season when the Oshawa Generals were founded. There's a bear silhouette in the negative space of the letter G. So right on the palm of the paw print, there is the bear silhouette, and it also makes up a G for the generals, which was thought was really clever. The curving water-like pattern inspired by the Caribbean cultures that make up the Black Canadian community, and then the letter G for generals creating the round part shape of a bear's paw. I thought this was very cleverly done. It's very clean. I absolutely love this. I think one thing one thing that stands out to me is the claws kind of look like candy corns.
I was saying the same thing.
It's not a white tip, but it is very the ombre is from like a red going up to a yellow, and they're triangles, so candy corn vibes. The secondary logo, it is a circle with a silhouette of a bear, like the full body bear, full body of a bear. My God, words. So the shape of the letter O for Oshawa, the curving water-like pattern inspired again by the Caribbean cultures that make up the Black Canadian community. So you keep the consistency tied together. And then a bear connected with the water-like patterns to represent Black history being interwoven with the team's history. I like it. I really like the color she used, but I think the primary logo is my favorite of the two. Yeah. Any thoughts from you?
Outside of the candy corn, I do love when, I mean, design in general, you want to give balance to the positive and negative space in your design, but when you can add the secondary layer of utilizing that respect and creating a design within itself, within the harmony of those two, positive and negative, is,
Mm,
like you said, it's clever, and it gives that extra layer of meaning, which certainly need to give a shout out and send praises. I'd say the one thing that I guess I think, if anything, if I were to say as a critique, is I feel like the Oshawa Generals kind of gets lost in the design.
in the paw print,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
it
really
feels a little
hard to
small.
kind of see, but the bigger meaning behind it is there, with the paw
Mhm.
print, with the bear, in both of the designs. And then obviously the things that you already walked us through, with the reason why there's 38 total pieces, the significance of the bear, the choice to do the curving water-like pattern, as relates to like cultural significance. Like, that's all the stuff that is like very that add that, like, the bigger meaning in the story and the representation that you want to convey.
Right. I think she did a great job regardless. Honestly, I kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it better than the Sharks logo she did. Just because, like, I have no hate. Just because this one feels very clean and very ¿cómo se llama? Like, this one feels more like a logo as opposed to the one that she did for the Sharks felt more like an illustration, right? Like this feels more graphic designy for me.
That's true. I'll say that. I would say so too.
I like both. No hate. But yeah, that's pretty much what we got for the week. I don't know if you have any last thoughts.
No, I guess just stay safe out there. We're always going to be bringing the fun, the positivity, but given the situation that we're experiencing right now, we're not naive or shying away from that sort of stuff. So every now and then we will be bringing that into the conversations, but we're always trying to bring the positive side and something to sort of take your mind off of things for a little bit, and enjoy this sport that we love so much. And yeah, and so we really appreciate if you like the stuff that we're doing on here, enjoying our conversations. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, leave us a message. We're always happy to interact with everybody that's gives us a moment of their time during the week to listen to us. If you're listening to us wherever you like your podcasts, leave us a review. That helps us to get seen by other folks who may be looking for our platform. Speaking of which, since I mentioned this to you earlier in the week, I was thinking about, again, given the climate, but even if it wasn't, this is always such a great thing to do. There is a app that pretty much the focus is to give people an easier access to find queer owned or ally supporting businesses really anywhere in the world, but primarily it seems like I did get a quick glance. Of course, it's like mainly US based because the developer is US based. But I did check out other countries, and it looks like folks over there are also putting their businesses on there. I'm going to pull it up here real quick. It's called Everywhere is Queer. This is a app that you can get at your app store. I went ahead and downloaded, take a look around. As I mentioned, I also submitted the podcast there as well, because artists can also put themselves on there even if they don't have a physical location. And I just wanted to touch upon the reason why, from the developer, why this person had put it together. Let me pull that up real quick. So this is from About the Founder. It says, "Hi, I'm so grateful you have made it here. I love to share a little bit about myself and this idea started up at how this idea started and became a reality. My name is Charlie, pronouns he, they, founder and creator of Everywhere is Queer and our worldwide map. I grew up on stolen Ho-Chunk land in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and currently call the stolen land of Multnomah, which is Portland, Oregon, home. A few years ago, I had the privilege of traveling, sleeping at least one night in 41 of the 50 United States, and my biggest takeaway from that experience is the very website that you're on right now, Everywhere is Queer. Throughout my travels, pit stops, and visits to new places, I kept finding myself searching, quote, queer spots in blank. Maybe you relate to that. Then in July 2021, I volunteered at Brave Trails, a queer youth camp, and driving back to Colorado, where I lived at the time, I was ruminating on my road trip experience. I said, quote, "I just wish there was a map of safe spaces for queer people," end quote. And the light bulb lit up. Everywhere is Queer became an idea that I couldn't stop thinking about, sharing with people, and eventually spending all of my extra time on. I soon found myself starting to network with queer-owned businesses across the world, and I knew this was something people wanted and needed. So we did it, and now you're looking at it. I'm so glad you found us, and I cannot only use our map wherever you need it, but you help others find those safe spaces. Consider yourself a part of our EIQ community. Our team loves to meet new people and are open to any ideas on how we can collaborate, and love the opportunity to hear your story. We are here to listen always." So yeah, I mean, I've definitely found myself in situations where I've wanted to know if there's, a shop or something nearby with queer folks, especially now more than ever. I think it's most important to find your communities and support each other. And so that's really kind of what sort of got me started looking for something like this. And well, thankfully someone else thought of it already. Charlie, thank you for all that you do. So over glass, you can see us listed in the Bay Area. And then just generally, if you kind of are wanting this sort of resource, I'd say go check it out. You don't even know that there's a a number of businesses just in like your backyard.
No, for sure. I think, like, with all the different road trips I've taken, I would have loved to have something like this and be like, oh, I know, like, I know it's a safe place for me to be, but also queer owned businesses to support while I'm in the area or something. So thanks for sharing. That was really cool. I'm glad that I don't know how you stumbled upon these things, but like,
Just
yeah.
literally putting, is there an app for like queer businesses? Like, or I just started searching for like, because I've been trying to find stuff in our area that like even things with all the talk of um like grocery prices and stuff like that and whatever, and like I said, right now more than ever we need to be finding our community, supporting each other. So I started thinking, what do I do in my day-to-day life where I'm giving money to just out of because I need something. I look up, where do I go? I don't, and I started thinking about, well, I mean, we know the thing with like Target right now. I've
Mm,
stopped going to Target, and that
mhm.
kind of was sort of like started getting the wheels going. Like I said, it's something that is good always, but kind of the situation that we're in started making me think about it even more than I already do. And that's kind of where I was like, man, I'm trying to search for this stuff and I'm not getting the information that I need. And then just in my persistence of trying to find the answers to what I want, I ended up stumbling on this. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, Jay. Everyone, like, for real, queer, even if you're not queer, check it out. Support the queer community. We're we're everywhere. We would like support in all places. Positive support. We don't need negativity out here anymore. We're tired. Anyways, that's our episode this week. Thanks for joining us. I've been your host, Ness.
and I'm Jay.
Catch y'all next week. Bye.